Um, yeah, just diving right into this. My name is Isaac Proch. This is my video for the Core Games Dev Bootcamp. It's called Cyber Death. I'm very beginner in this platform. Just getting my feet wet at E. That makes it super easy for anyone to just jump in and make some games. But each team has 3 different spawn points. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Next Valley. My name is Isaac Proch, and I am thrilled to bring to you today a video that goes a little bit more into what I was doing last year in the month of September. I was admitted and accepted into the Core Games Dev Bootcamp, and from that program I had learned a ton and was sort of crash coursed through all of Core's features, functionalities, different mechanics, and also just a little preview. It ended and culminated with a game jam that lasted a couple days at the end of the month. We were split up into different teams, and each team had a simulated game dev environment or a small indie studio environment, and so it was really cool to learn all about that stuff from a game development standpoint, really executing on scoping things down from the original vision, and it really just, again, illustrated how unique, cool, challenging, just how insane the gaming industry is as a whole for myself. Getting more into the actual publishing side of things and releasing the content. Everything prior to this, I would say, is very much just more hobbyist and experimental for a lot of the projects that I've been working on. I haven't released any of them commercially or anything like that. So yeah, hopefully this video gives you sort of a sneak peek or a look into specifically the Core Games Dev Bootcamp, if that's something that you're looking forward to or something that might interest you in the future. I know they just announced the applications for their next program. I think it's either the summer or fall of this year, but they're taking applications right now from what I saw. And it's super exciting. That community is very supportive. I want to give a huge shout out to everyone that moderates their Discord. It's amazing to see. Even when I started streaming before the Game Dev Bootcamp, I was streaming my progression as I was learning Core, and I think that helped a lot just in terms of getting their eyes, the company of Manticore, on myself with that application process. Also, just wanted to note that if you come from another engine background, a lot of the stuff is very easy to pick up and play with in Core. The one thing that they really focus on is allowing you as a creator to have an idea for a game, whether it be single player or multiplayer, but really allowing you to execute on the multiplayer mechanics inside of it. Whereas beforehand, if you're working with Unity or Unreal, or if any other engine that you're comfortable with, you know that multiplayer gaming and just the networking side of things is a huge headache and just a problem overall in terms of the efficiency of your development pipeline. Core, that's where they step in. They allow you to just play with a lot of drag and drop templates and community content stuff that quickly gets you caught up to speed in terms of single player mechanics, how you can translate those to multiplayer, how you can get networking events happening, broadcasting, different things on server side and client side, all of that stuff. Yeah, so with that being said, I think I've given enough of an intro for this so far. Let's continue seeing what I did with Core last year, specifically through the bootcamp in September, but a little bit before, a little bit after. I'm also going to release a series of videos around each of the game jams that I've participated in. I submitted a few different game jams through Core and Manticore side of things, but prior to this, I've also tried a few game jams before, working in Unity, one working in Game Maker. Had a ton of fun, but I never really got to that next level of actually having a working game. It was much more just a mechanic or an idea in terms of a prototype. And after doing this bootcamp last September, that really changed how I planned and did all of my thinking from a game development standpoint, or if I had an idea for a game. Whenever you get put through that game dev environment, you really have to focus on your MVP, is what they call it. It's the MVP. It's the minimum viable product. It's such a cliche term and used a lot, but it's so helpful. Just especially for someone as a video game creator that wants to do a little bit of everything, it's very overwhelming very quickly to have to focus on the programming side of things, the art side of things, how the multiplayer is going to integrate with those games, and just all of that entailed. However, core, with the templated content and just how easy it is to really dial down what that MVP is, you can have a prototype that may not look the greatest art-wise, but it could be amazing mechanically, and from a programming standpoint, that could blow up on the platform, and that will give you more of an idea of what the community and what the marketplace out there is really looking for. And vice versa. You could have one game really pop off just for the aesthetic or the art style and sort of the world creating that you're doing, but you could be lacking in some of the more gameplay hooks and the mechanics that are keeping players coming back. Once you see both sides of that, it really helped me to understand that when I was approaching these game jams, I was doing it just jumping in with too much to focus on. I was in over my head, and I wasn't doing the appropriate scope down with the MVP of whatever that project or game idea was. So yeah, crucial MVP. You're going to hear that a lot throughout here, and don't forget it. So the first couple days of Bootcamp were really just spent introducing everybody that was involved from Manticore, and also the applicants and everyone that was admitted into the program. After that, we started doing different workshops and essentially live trainings to get everyone caught up to speed on all of the basics you would need to know and the bare necessities when it would come to preparing for this game jam at the end of the month. I was super excited. Each of the workstations or workshops throughout each of the days were varied, very comprehensive. You could ask questions. After that, second week, we start really talking about the game pitch and how you're going to adequately and effectively pitch your game idea for the game jam within 30 to 60 seconds. Everyone in the bootcamp had the opportunity to do so, and after completing this exercise or this routine with everyone, we started to realize how much all of our visions were just out of scope and how much we really needed to start with an MVP in order to effectively pitch and present this game to a varied cast of expertise levels and different backgrounds in terms of programming, artists, all of that. And that perfectly segues into my next lesson learned while participating in the Core Game Dev Bootcamp. Second lesson is scope down. You'll start with the MVP, that's lesson 1, and then lesson 2, scope down even further. I'll explain further. Let me fast forward to the end of the bootcamp. Whenever we were assigned into our 2 separate teams, we each got our roles within those teams, and we chose which game we wanted to, out of the pitches, which one we wanted to actually work on. So I'd like to present to you Space Werewolves Among Us. Here's the trailer for it. Be right back. Among Us was a breakout hit in 2020, and with that inspiration, my team was setting out to make Core's version of it, with our own unique changes like the setting, camera perspective, and the addition of a werewolf stalker that would drive one of the main player loops. Here you can see some of our initial mood boarding and reference images as we built out the game design document. I was one of 2 project managers and did a mixture of just keeping things running between playtests on both the art and programming side, and also helping where I could with code. Our initial scope was a massive space station that was reaching calamity, and it was up to the crew members to repair oxygen tanks before the werewolf successfully killed all crewmates or stalled enough time for the ship to reach crisis point. Even our initial scope of abilities and map size were drastically revised a day into the game jam. We quickly realized that filling the environment at that scale we whiteboxed was going to take too long, and this would also inherently affect the core mechanics of cooldowns, abilities, and player movement. Therefore, lesson 2 of just scoping down even further after the initial round of MVP analysis, I would call it, I would highly recommend doing it again and just stripping down the game until you get to its very, very core iteration, or the smallest iteration size you can get with the MVP. I'm mumbling here. yada yada. Communication was and is one of the most important aspects of the project manager role. Without clear communication between playtests, you can quickly have a mess in terms of productivity and having too many cooks in the kitchen, as the saying goes. My team ran into this issue, and that was even with Discord, a shared game design document, and more that were being used to sync all team members regardless of time zone. A short summary of this case was the iterations our map went through. I had mentioned it earlier, but our initial map was too large and we got held up in the whiteboxing process longer than expected or wanted. These iterations led to a crossing of wires, and we didn't best use design and art time to plan ahead. Looking back on it, I could have over-communicated at each stage of this brainstorm and possibly gave us more time to focus on details elsewhere. Ultimately, you always have these learning scenarios, but what I found most helpful looking back was that communication should always be written down, passed to all team members, and giving everyone time to share any concerns or confusions that they may have. The least amount of friction was my goal as a project manager, and clear communication that could be seen as extra or over-communicating sometimes is something that definitely made things run smoother. That brings us to lesson 4. Don't beat yourself up for not being great at all aspects of game dev. It's such a complex and varied industry that reaching a mastery of any corner takes a lot of time, work, and patience. Therefore, if you have a team or even just another person helping you create the game, lesson 4 being is to lean into your strengths. It's crucial to be honest with what your strengths and weaknesses are. Our Game Dev Bootcamp Game Jam team, that's a mouthful, was awesome at this, and we quickly ironed out what each person wanted to do based on their preferences and experience levels. Even if you want to learn more of another expertise, you can rely on your team members to show you new techniques and some of the behind the scenes for their process. I would recommend using any of that free time you have completing your required tasks doing so, and playing into your strengths even better allow you to finish up your contributions quicker, and then you can see how you can be helpful in other ways while beefing up the weaknesses that you want to improve upon. For example, whenever it was possible, I would help with the programming side of things, and I was able to learn a lot from our lead programmer, and just seeing how his thought process and everything went to his process helped a ton. Now, lesson 5, this may seem like an easy or a stupid lesson to add on as the final. However, the reason I'm including it is because of how easy it is to also get lost in the stress and chaos of any game jam, and in particular a game dev bootcamp. I took a lot of mental breathing moments to evaluate the problems we ran into while also being confident in the team's power to solve these problems in effective ways. Without taking those moments to really reflect on how these challenges were going to be something positive to look back on and learn from, I think my overall impression of this bootcamp wouldn't be nearly as positive. Also, documenting things with screen captures, recordings, and however else possible will also allow you to have a better experience in any bootcamp or game jam environment you may be in. I think this helps being able to see the iterations that your game went through. It really adds to the rewarding feeling you'll get at the end when it's time to submit or release your creation. And that concludes my 5 lessons learned while in Core Game Dev Bootcamp. I hope you enjoyed the video. I also just wanted to note that Space Werewolves Among Us is playable on Core Games. It's also possible to clone that game template to make your own adjustments or just see how everything works. I use this method of learning all the time with Core. With community content and the ability to clone open source game projects, you can start messing around and learn at an incredible pace.